Well, welcome everybody. My name is Boomer Sassman, and I'm going to walk you through a WordPress next 2 hours, or as long as you guys want to hang. I'm going to walk through a WordPress overview, a little bit of background, mostly kind of, we're going to just jump in and actually like build a WordPress website. We'll talk about plugins, themes, updates, backups. It's really hard to cram all of WordPress and all of building a website into 2 hours. I'm going to do my best to give you kind of the where we came from, where we're at, and where we're going. Again, my name is Boomer Sassman. A couple of disclaimers. I have a fire station across the street from my house, so if I mute myself, it might be because there's a brigade of fire trucks leaving. It happens throughout the day. I don't really hear it until I'm teaching a class. I will do my best to be linear with everything, although the internet is kind of anything but linear. Like the internet is as kind of fragmented as possible. And so I have tried over the years to kind of weave what I think is kind of a logical progression of where we came from, where we're at, and where we're going into a class. I've been using WordPress for about 18 years. And it's been the core of my business. Big Boom Design is the company. We're based here in Asheville. And I will try my best to not geek out too hardcore on anything overly web related, but it's going to happen. That's my disclaimer ahead of time. And we got some new people coming in here. Make sure I get this. All right. All right, cool. Also, just up front, if anybody has questions, now that the chat's working, please put them in the chat. I will try my best to kind of scan through and look at the questions. I might not bring it up at that time because it might be something I'm going to bring up later, and I'll kind of hold that question and weave it into the topic or the realm of WordPress that we get to when we get to it, if it makes more sense then. If you want to unmute, totally fine. There's, you can do the little hand raise, whatever you guys want to do. Again, there's only like 10 of us, if that, so it's going to be pretty informal. So, all right, while I get this going, I live in Asheville, technically Leicester, and I've been here for about 15 years. Been in Asheville for about almost 20 now. Went to school at App State in Boone for industrial design, and that's all the background you guys need to hear. We're going to kind of jump right in. Can you guys see the screen that I'm sharing over here? It should be just kind of a black and white welcome to WordPress intro thing. I assume that's working unless you guys tell me otherwise. Let me jump back to the chat. And Naya, I'm happy to do a part two for this. Are you guys seeing the screen that I'm sharing? That would be a big thing that we need to see.
Now I can.
Okay. All right. Sweet. Okay. Cool. So
I see it here.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a few minutes, but I'm just going to talk. Feel free to kind of look around at what's going on, especially if you're kind of new into the WordPress space and this is the first time that you've ever seen the behind the scenes of WordPress. And I'm going to leave it here, but I'm going to talk for a few minutes, about 5 to 6 minutes or so, about what we're looking at, where it is, what I've done to get this going. So before I dig super deep into that, WordPress is a open source content management system. And that's a complex way to say open source means that it's free. You can go and just download a copy of WordPress. You can set it up wherever you want to set it up on any kind of hosting environment. There are thousands of hosting companies out there that you can do this with. GoDaddy is probably the one that most people know about. GoDaddy also does domain names. And I'm kind of skipping through some of this stuff, but I'm laying the groundwork of what do I need to like have a website for my business or for whatever purpose you're trying to set it up for. And so you can get a copy of WordPress for free. You do have to pay some company to host the website, assuming you want traffic to be able to flow to it from either Google or typing in the domain name correct or exactly as it is. And so we have to be able to point a domain name to a website, to a server that is running WordPress. And so, somebody's got Hostinger. I can run through, SiteGround, Bluehost, Kinsta, HostGator. There's like thousands and thousands. And so I get a lot of questions about like, well, who should I host with? And does it matter if my domain name is with the same company as the hosting? A lot of those questions. So it's fine to host with whoever you want to host with. But depending on the importance of your website and the uptime, making sure that it's always there, accessible, running quickly, all that stuff, you should look to pay at least $15 to $20 a month for kind of that base level hosting with a reputable company. And so Kinsta, Kinsta, is the server that I use, but we host hundreds and hundreds of sites. And some of those are really, really big, massive sites. And so we need like a lot of firepower behind that server compared to going with somebody like Bluehost or GoDaddy, where you can get like a single site license and a single site setup hosting environment where you're going to get enough. Assuming you're building like a 5 to 15 page website, there's nothing massively complex on it. 15 to $25 a month is perfectly acceptable for hosting. You want to steer clear of like the $5, $6 a month type of thing, unless that's, year one is cheap and then it goes up. So, think of this as, when your business is closed, if you have a brick and mortar business, when the door is closed and it's nighttime, your website's the only thing that's open to the world. And so you want to make sure that it's live, running quickly, and stable. So you don't have to have your domain name at the same company as your hosting. It does make it a little bit easier. Some folks will say that's not a great idea because if that company goes down and they've got your domain name and your website, that's a problem. GoDaddy's gone down like 3 times in the past 18 years that I've been doing this, and it's catastrophic and it's crazy. But if a quarter of the world or half of the world's website have gone down, your site, it's kind of like, where does it fall in the realm of, importance? It's super important to you, but if it's creating this like $1 trillion event because half the internet's down, it's less significant. And so GoDaddy's a reputable company. And the biggest thing I like about GoDaddy is that they're really, really quick when they update domain names or anything like that. And typically most people have their domain name with GoDaddy. So that's kind of a cheaper option. Bluehost is good. SiteGround is good. If anybody has hosting at any company and they want to throw it in there and get my opinion, I'm happy to do that. But I'm not making money off of any of these companies. I've just, hosted lots of sites over the years, and it is worth paying a little bit more for quality, quick hosting. And the last thing I'll say about that is tech support. Pick up the phone. If you're trying to figure out who to go with, call the company rather than open a ticket or go through their online stuff. Call, and if they don't answer, if you don't get somebody quick that can answer your questions, maybe that's not great. Because in times of catastrophe, when your site might be down or you've loaded a plugin that crashed things and you can't get anybody on the phone or a quick response, that is stressful. So call them, see if they're real humans that answer, talk to them, ask questions about what happens in, catastrophic times. And if you get a good vibe from it, go with them. All right, cool. So that was a little bit about domain names. That was a little bit about hosting. Last thing on domain names is, how important is the domain name? It's less important these days than it was back in the day for a lot of reasons. What I mean by that is, getting like the specific domain name that you really, really, really want. Sometimes it's taken and you can't get that. And so you can get a .net, you can get a .co, you can get a .ai, you can get a whatever you want. And the extension really has no bearing at all on how well or poorly you show up on Google. Content is and has been for a while now like the most important thing. Good design, loading the site fast, having it be secure, all these things are really important. But what good is like a really pretty well-functioning site if nobody gets to it and nobody can find it? So, there's only so many business cards you can hand out where people are going to go straight to it. So it is important to get the domain name that you want, but doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on optimization these days. So the 3 things that I typically tell people are get a domain name that's as short as possible, that is easy to spell, and is keyword rich, if possible. But those shouldn't like steer you away from something. So those are like guidelines, less rules. A lot of people have their name in the domain name. If it's a sole practice, or if you're a psychiatrist, or somebody that's like seeing patients, you might have your name in it. Sassman is a really hard word to spell. There's 2 N's at the end. And so you might just be in that realm where you have a complicated first or last name. It's fine to just go with that and be the brand that you're building. So as we transition kind of back more specifically over to WordPress and what we're looking at right here, this site's set up on Kinsta. Kinsta is one hosting company that's out there. I think it's 35 bucks a month for a single site, which is a little pricey, but I can vouch for them. They are one of the best in the business. And we have about 85 to 90 sites that we host on this one specific server. It's really, really fast. And it's really secure. It's really fast. And that's one of the reasons I really like working with them. Their tech support's great. So whoever you go with to host the website, I mentioned before that WordPress is free and you can go and download a copy of it. If you do that and you get a copy of WordPress, that's then a challenge. Like, what do you do with this zip file and all these PHP files? So if anybody has like they've heard about WordPress, they're like, oh, I want to get into this. You download it and you're like, what now? You don't really need to go that route these days. And that route being a manual download and then manually uploading and then running the install and all that stuff. If you go with any one of these companies that mentions WordPress in their hosting options, they will set up WordPress for you. And the process isn't super tedious if you do it manually or do it yourself. But if you just don't have to do it at all and they can set it up and know that it's set up correctly, you should go with that. So if you pick whatever company you want to go with for hosting, whether it be the same company that has your domain name or not, that's fine. You can do what's called the one-click WordPress install. A lot of times they're gonna ask you what's the name of the site, what's your email address, what's the admin username, what's the password, and they might ask you a few other questions to help kind of curate the WordPress install a little bit more closely to what you're going to be doing with the website. For instance, they might say, is this going to be a personal blog? Is this a business? Is it service or product based? Do you plan to sell anything online? And based on those questions that you answer, they're going to curate that install. And for instance, if you say, yes, I'm going to sell things online, they might preload WooCommerce, which is what gives WordPress the capabilities to be an e-commerce platform like Shopify. So you can always obviously skip those questions on the onboarding and you can just do that stuff afterwards. I'm going to show you all how to do that. We're going to jump into the plugin section. We can load WooCommerce just to find it, and I'll show you how to do that. Some plugins require a lot of setup, and so we're not going to dig super deep into that. It's going to be a kind of a skim the surface of a lot of the areas of WordPress, and unfortunately a few like not technical, but a few like boring. This is the settings section, and here's the things that are important. I'm gonna skip over anything that's really not important. Yeah, so I think with that last little bullets that I've got, I try to keep this first intro to under 20 minutes, and we're at 18 minutes in. So WordPress is 40 to date. I try to update these stats every time. WordPress is 43% of the entire internet. It is 61.4% of all content management systems on the internet. So it's almost half of the entire internet, and it is the majority of all content management systems. I mentioned that word earlier. I said it's an open source content management system. Open source means that it's free. Content management system is that it's a little piece of software that runs, that manages all of your pictures, your postings, your pages, what it looks like, how it functions. It's like a little mini version of Windows, essentially, that you interact with on your computer or the Mac operating system. It just runs on the web, and it's got a specific look and a specific amount of content. And you can kind of think of this as that content management system that is running behind your website. And so that's what that CMS acronym means. I'm a big fan of TLAs, which stands for three-letter acronyms. So I will throw out a bunch of them. I try to catch myself, and I might say it, but then I'll go back and be like, oh, that's what this TLA means. So that's one of the other disclaimers that I forgot to mention. To date, there's 65,000 plugins. Plugins are little bundles of code that somebody else built that add some capability. There's 65,000 of them. Those plugins do everything from WooCommerce is one. I mentioned that earlier. That adds e-commerce capabilities. There are things like slider plugins that adds like a homepage slider. There are form plugins. There are everything that you can think of plugins that just handle all of the pieces and parts that you might think, I need my website to do blank. I think that's all on plugins, but there will probably be plugins questions down the road as we work through this. So if anybody has any specific plugins that they're curious about, or a realm of plugin where it's like, hey, what's the best slider, security, SEO, whatever it is, feel free to throw those out there. Veronica, that is a complicated domain name. I'm just looking over into the chat. Um, it's not super complex, but it's a little complex. The other thing is you can have multiple domain names. You can have the one that everybody lands at, and then you can have however many you want to forward over to it. For instance, Big Boom Design, no S on the end, is our domain name and the company name. After a number of years of being in business and people saying, you know, I sent you an email to Boomer at Big Boom Designs, I realized, that's going to be a thing. And so I just got the plural version and pointed it over. And so sometimes people get misspellings of their name, again, if they have a complex name, or the plural, non-plural. You might get the .net, .com, .co. It's up to you. My word of warning is don't become a domain name squatter, hoarder, whatever you want to say. As a self-appointed hoarder of too many domain names for too many years, you can spend a lot of money and just like they just sit there. So cool. The last thing before we actually jump into this build is that I hate that I have to mention this, but I do. There are two versions of WordPress. There is the WordPress.com version, and there is WordPress.org. And probably 1 out of the 10 of you already knows what I'm talking about because you might have gone the route of a .com site. Some of you might have one right now, and you're thinking, how do I pivot and go to the .org? And when I say this, I'm not talking about the domain name that you pick to be your domain name. There are literally like two versions of WordPress, and there's one where it's called the self-hosted, and that is what you get if you go to any hosting company and you say, hey, Bluehost, HostGator, GoDaddy, Kinsta, whoever you go to, set me up a WordPress site. That's going to be the WordPress.org platform in a way. You can go to WordPress.com and you can get free hosting. They limit what you can do with that website because it's free. They limit the plugins that you can install, the themes that you can use, whether or not you monetize anything. There's a lot of limitations if you go that route. And it's been a confusing thing for both me to try to explain whenever I teach classes. It's confusing for folks to try to understand, like, well, why is this the case? And I wish that WordPress made like a really succinct, 3-minute video that explained this. And so instead, you guys have to listen to me do the 3-minute version. But that is kind of a confusing thing that I feel like I need to mention just to mention it. So if anybody does have questions related to that, throw it in the chat or shoot me an email and we can address that. You can migrate from WordPress.org, I'm sorry, from WordPress.com over into the self-hosted. That is not covered in this class at all. And that's, frankly, that's something these days that there are tons of blog posts out there that would lay that process out in a really, really clean way. Or if you're using any kind of AI, that's a simple question like, how do I migrate from this to this? Okay. What I'm showing on the screen here, now that I've been sharing this for about 20 minutes and not even actually talking about it, this is a brand new, fresh WordPress install. I went into Kinsta, the hosting company, where this is set up, and I said, new site. And it said, what's the name of the site? What's the admin username? What's the admin password? And it set up in about 5 minutes. It installed this version, this fresh, clean version of WordPress. So I've done nothing to this at all other than say, hey, Kinsta, give me a fresh, clean WordPress install. I skipped all the questions that they asked me as far as, is this an e-commerce site or what do you plan to do with this? I skipped past all of that so that there's no additional plugins, there's no additional themes. It's literally a bare bones, raw WordPress as we can get at the moment. So the first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about like how to navigate. And if any of you have WordPress sites, you're going to be like, all right, man, come on, speed up and move on. It's important. I'll do it quick, I promise. Um, when you're logged into the admin side of the website, and the way that you get there is by going to whatever the domain name is. And I say that way because if you haven't pointed your domain name to this fresh new install, then what is the domain name? Every one of these hosting companies, once they spin up a WordPress site, they're going to give you some very specific address. In my case, it's WordPress101.kinsta.cloud. And that is what we would call a temporary domain name or temporary URL. And I'm going to go ahead and log out and take you literally to the very beginning of this. So if I get to the front side of the website, not logged in, this is what it looks like. Very boring. It's very, there's no real design. There's no content. There's nothing really loaded yet. There's one blog post right here at the front. And this has been the case going back for as long as I've worked with WordPress. Hello World is always the singular blog post that's put in. It's simply there just for you to see a piece of content so that you can go into the posting section and click on it and like learn about the editing process. So from the front side of the site, I'm going to go up to the temporary URL. I'll put in a /WP-admin, WP for WordPress, and then a little hyphen, and then admin. And I'm going to log in with whatever I picked as the login for the when I set this up. Hopefully I got that right. Cool. All right, now that we are logged in, I'm going to jump over here, and at the very, very top, notice that we now have this black bar that showed up, and we've got all the rest of the admin stuff. If I click on WordPress 101, and this will be whatever you called your site, that is going to jump me to the front side of the site. So we're back here, plus that top admin bar. And so I've got this kind of quick nav to jump back to the dashboard. I've got an edit site button and a few other things across the top. I'm going to ignore a lot of those for right now. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. There's a little profile badge that you can go into your profile. We could add a new post, add new media, add new page. There's a comment call out. There's an updates comment. We're going to, we'll circle back to some of these a little bit later. But the main thing is the ability to just kind of jump back and forth between the front side and the back side is going to be that clicking on the site name that's got your little house icon. So if it is your first time ever kind of jumping into a WordPress site, it is worth looking at these little comments and call out boxes. You don't have to study them, but you know, WordPress is, for the whole time that it's been around, which is almost, I think, over 20 years now, they've learned from millions and millions and millions of people about how to guide and coach folks through this process. And so they've really scrutinized the feedback and the onboarding and the steps that they lay out early on for folks. And it's gotten a whole lot better over the years. I used to just kind of say, just close all these boxes, ignore all these little intro things. I'm going to teach you all this stuff. And over the years, it has gotten a lot better. And so they do a good job of kind of dropping in like little guiding features. And we'll see that as we go look at plugins and themes and build some stuff out. A little bit of housekeeping stuff again. There's this particular version of WordPress that we're running right now. It is 6.9.4. This is very similar to your computer needing to run an update. There are updates that happen with WordPress. We'll touch more on that a little bit later. And kind of on this home screen, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Hopefully you guys can see that. If people can't see this, just let me know and I can keep zooming in. It gets a little weird and wonky when you're going too far. We've got these 5 boxes plus that spot out to the right, and it's a brand new site. So the site health being A-OK is not a surprise. There's no content, there's no plugins, there's nothing out of date. So there is actually one plugin out of date, which is awesome that the site got spun up with an out-of-date plugin, and so that lets us go in and talk about updates with an actual plugin that needs an update. So that's cool. We have one post, that is that Hello World post. We've got one page, it's called sample page. Those are the 2 pieces of content that exist when you set up a site. And then we have one comment on that one post being a blog post. We're running that version of WordPress, and the theme that is active, the theme is, it's called 2025. And They every year WordPress rolls out a new theme for that version that will spin up as kind of the core starter theme. Rarely do people stay with that theme because, as you saw, it's pretty bland and pretty boring intentionally. And so we'll have a big chunk of time that we'll talk about themes, and I'll mention the main theme that we use, which is called Divi. And we're actually going to build out a site and use Divi, and I'll show you spinning up some pages. The section down below, again, because it's a brand new site, there's very, very little activity. This is kind of the starter batch. The time is wrong because of where the server is. We don't have to get into that, but like servers in another time zone, so it got spun up there. Things can be off. There's a setting where you can change that. Quick draft, I've never really ever used myself. It just kind of lets you brain dump a quick idea, which can turn into a blog post. But if you're going to do that, it's just like one more click, two more clicks to go postings, new post. And then you get your editor, and you can add images and links and do all the stuff that you might want to do, like you were creating a blog post. To me, it's a silly thing that they've kept in there, but quick draft. And then down below, this is WordPress attempt to help folks find people locally within a city or two of where they live and get more involved in the actual like in-person aspects about WordPress. WordPress is the biggest community out there. And because of that, there's a lot of folks in every city all over the world that are working on building, maintaining, fixing, hacking WordPress sites. And so, you know, almost 20 years ago when I came into town and was doing sites, there was only like 10 people that were like web companies. And now, you know, you can walk into any coffee shop anywhere around Asheville or down in Charlotte or anywhere, and there's probably like somebody doing something with a WordPress website, which is really wild. So it's grown and grown and grown, and there is a very big and vibrant community, local community in whatever city you're in. So meetup groups are a great one. We've got one here in Asheville, and there's all kinds of events that happen. So that's my get involved with WordPress in a physical realm, meet other people doing it. You'll learn a lot, maybe more than you will from me over the next little bit here. So I do miss those days. I was a whole lot more like personally involved with WordPress prior to COVID, and I kind of miss that aspect about this community. So the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to jump one more time just back to the front side, and we're going to look at to see how all that content that we just saw, where that shows. WordPress 101 is the name that I gave this website. Sample page, that's where the menu is going to stack out. So home, about, contact, services. We're going to actually build out a menu, but that's why sample page is shown up there. That's the one page that was loaded. This is the one blog post. And the reason why this is set as the home page right now, homepage, is because WordPress has its roots in the blogging realm. WordPress, going back to the beginning of when WordPress was created, it was built to be a blogging platform. And I still chuckle these days, 20 years in, when I meet people and I'm wearing a WordPress shirt or a hat, or they see a sticker and they're like, isn't that like little blogging platform? And I kind of just chuckle. I'm like, yeah, it is. Yes, it's a little blogging platform. And these days it is also the far, far, far extreme of that. And so I love the fact that WordPress has the ability to go from, I just want a little travel blog, to I'm going to build $1 million a month e-commerce business. And anything in between that is very, very doable. How far you're trying to go with it might require you to pull some folks in or do some serious education way beyond what you're going to get in this 2 hours. But my hope is that all of you all see that like, oh, I can do this. I can jump in and maintain a site that was built by somebody else. Or I can build it out, and then at some point maybe hire somebody, or I might really like this and I just want to keep going with it. So this is actually a blog post. So if I click on that, it's going to jump away from the home page, and we are now on that specific post. I'll go back. And the reason I bring that up is because we need to just check one little toggle button that says, don't make the home page of our website show blog posts. This is not going to be a blog. This is going to be a website. It might have a blog, but that's going to be on the blog page. But by default, when WordPress gets set up, it's going to be set as a blog. And that's one of the first things we're going to jump into is we're going to make a home page. It's going to be blank. We're going to make a home page, and then we're going to say, that's the home page. And we're going to make a blog page and say, this is where the blog post should go and should live, not to the homepage. So this will be the first thing we actually jump in and do. I'm going to jump again back to the admin side. I'm going to go and we're going to make one page, sorry, two, a blog page and a home page. I lied earlier. I said there's only one page called sample page. They now load a privacy policy page in place as well, but it is set as draft. So I'm going to just say add new page, and we're going to just kind of take a look at what we're thrown into here. So again, in attempting to be helpful, they're going to try and WordPress is going to try to throw a few things out here to say, hey, start this way. One of the cautionary things that I'll throw out there is that I think it's a bad idea to jump immediately into the theme realm or the design of the website or blog, whatever you're building, because it gets you instantly not focused on content and menu structure and what you're going to put on the site. And it's like, oh, go look at all these pretty shiny objects over here and pick the theme. And while that might be helpful, and we are going to jump into the theme realm, it can be immediately misleading, and it can shift your focus away from crafting out your content, figuring out your pages, collecting the images, resizing, renaming, like all the not fun stuff, but that's the stuff that actually like makes the site. So they do right off the bat say, hey, why don't you pick the particular theme or the design that you're trying to go for? And they let you scroll through and look at these. There are thousands and thousands of free themes, and there are thousands and thousands of paid themes, and you kind of get what you pay for. You can get by on a free theme. You're not really going to get any support from the person that made it because you're not paying them. The documentation might not be great. It could be buggy. There's a lot of things that early on, while it's fine as you're going through your learning curve, it's fine to play around with these themes. In the long run, you're probably going to want to go spend 50 to $100, look through all these themes, find one that matches the style and layout of your business, image heavy, text heavy, more blog-like, more restaurant-like, more service industry, whatever it might be. So I'm actually going to just close this pop-up window. And I hate that they got rid of that there was a momentary pop-up that happened right behind this. And I wanted to talk about that because those are the kind of the guiding steps that WordPress put out there to take you through, like, this is the first time you've made a page. Here's 4 or 5 steps about what you're seeing and why to do it. And they do that little pop-up in place, and now it goes away. Anyway, it's fairly self-explanatory, but we're going to walk through it. And so I'm just going to say, rather than home, I'm going to call this welcome. And I'm going to pull up a lorem ipsum. And so lorem ipsum is just Latin text. We've been using it since the 1400s, since the 1500s. It's just filler text. And I'm going to come over here and just grab this and click down in here and just paste it in. The only reason we're doing this is because once we do get to the step where we're going to want to look at what a theme does to the pages, what font does it set? What color does it set? What does it do to the headings? How does it handle the images? We need to have stuff in here so that when we change between the themes, we can say, I like that or I don't like that. And if we just have kind of an empty site and we're looking at themes, we don't really get that ability. So if you have content and if you're rebuilding, let's say a Wix or Weebly or Squarespace or Shopify website or a WordPress website, you probably have some content. And so you don't have to go the lorem ipsum route. It's better to put your own stuff in here than to use text that you have to swap out later anyway. So I've added this content over here on the left. As you can see, we've got kind of a little toolbar of things that we can change and we can set. I'm not going to dig super deep into all of these. Poor lorem ipsum, that's good. I like that. A lot of these things are very straightforward. If you've been writing emails and sending, doing Word documents or even Google Doc stuff, you've seen a lot of these things. It's alignment, it's bold, underline. One thing I'll point out there is the little chain link, and that lets you basically go in and highlight text and then say, I want to link that either out to some other website, or you can link internally. As you can see, we've got that sample page, the one page that exists until we publish this one. And we've got a handful of other things that we can do. but no need to run through and just tell you guys about how to edit text. There's also kind of a settings dropdown that these are settings about this particular block. And I say block because a handful of years ago, wow, 10 years ago, I think it's been now, we went away from what we used to call the WYSIWYG. WYSIWYG is an acronym for what you see is what you get. And that header bar up inside of Word, for instance, or Outlook, when you're writing an email or any whatever programs, all those little icons across the top, that's technically your WYSIWYG. And that's what we've called it for like decades. And in 2016, I think it was, WordPress said, you know what, this is not good. Like the acronym is wrong. What you see when you're editing compared to when you save and go look at it on the front side, that's not what you always get. So not only was the acronym wrong, but it was very frustrating. If any of you have dealt with websites over the past 20 years, you've had the frustration of trying to just like align an image or put two images side by side or not have the text wrap or have the text wrap. And so WordPress took on that challenge and said, we're going to build a new thing and we're going to redesign how people edit content because we're the top, we're the majority platform on the web. And so we want to try to help make this a better experience. So when they did this transition, they went to something called the Gutenberg block editor. And so what we're seeing here, and you might see this term block show up a couple times, we've got the header of the page, and then we've got a paragraph block. And if we look over here on the right, we can see we have this little tabby thing over here. These are settings about the page as a whole. And then these are settings about this specific block. Each block, and this is the big transition that happened, each block, whether it's a video, a gallery, a slider, a header, a quote block, a form block, you name it, any kind of block that you might need is going to have settings that are specific to that block. And that was really cool when that happened. And so now when we go in and we say, okay, I want my intro to be that paragraph, I want a new block, and I can choose from like the most common blocks that would be in here. I'm going to click browse all, and we're going to briefly just kind of talk through what's in here. I don't want to build out too much. Another disclaimer, when we get done with this whole process, this is going to be a really ugly website because we're doing this in this menu. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't know if it's me or what, but I don't know if it's lagging because every time you say over here, click this, I don't see your mouse move. I don't see anything.
Let me stop sharing and reshare. And is anybody else having the same bugginess? Can you see my cursor circling right now?
Now I do, yes.
Okay. Okay.
If you're moving it now, I don't see it.
Is anybody else having a little lag? I'm highlighting the welcome text right now.
Maybe I need to go out and come back in.
I don't have a lag.
Okay.
Okay.
If you want to, I can stall for like 30 seconds if you want to.
Okay, I'm gonna go out and come back in, okay?
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Everybody else good? Any other lag folks that lagging connections? It is super windy, and as weird as that is, sometimes my internet, even though I'm the internet guy, gets a little spotty. So if it is a constant thing for folks, let me know, and I'll try to. Maybe I'll even come back in. I'm going to leave this and not really scroll too much just to make sure that there isn't a lag. So talking about adding different blocks. As you can see on this left-hand side, there are specific blocks to handle different types of content, functionality, design, layout, you name it. There are a few consistent ones. There's probably a killer. Oh, let me get this mic disabled here. All right. Hi, are you good? Is this a little bit better?
Are you moving anything?
Here, how about I just highlighted the welcome text.
Okay, I see you highlight that.
Okay, cool. All right, I think we're good. So the block, I'm going to scroll through on this left-hand side just to show you why I'm not going to start digging deep into all of these because we got a bunch of, sampler WordPress stuff to cover. But the extent of this block library right out of the gate, like right out of a stock WordPress site, is extensive. And there are a few that I want to call out. I'm just going to scroll through this list because it's still going. There's like at least 100 now that are preloaded and come just right inside of WordPress when this is set up. And we now just kind of got down into the embed section, and I'm going to wrap up with this. I'll scroll back to the top. We have a little theme section, which is interesting. So I'll scroll back to the top of this list, and they do kind of prioritize stuff up towards the top. You can also search for a block if you're just like gallery, and you don't want to scan through and like really look to try to figure them all out. There's some I've never used that math. I'm not like opposed to math. I've just never built sites that have math related blocks in it, but there's lots of stuff in here. Some of the more common ones, this classic, that's the WYSIWYG that I was talking about earlier. And so WYSIWYG is that two bar row of little clickable items that we've all interacted with for a long time. If you only have one row, you got to click that last button. That used to be called show/hide the kitchen sink, which was awesome and I loved it. Now it's like toolbar toggle. That's not as cool, but it's all right. And then you can pop that view out into a bigger, version. So classic editor is still there because there was so much backlash from WordPress saying we've changed the WYSIWYG that people were like, no, bring us something back. So classic's in there. Quotes are used a lot. Quotes are just going to add big quote goes here. That was odd. Whatever just happened there. Let's try that again. I love live demos because just stuff is just always going to break. It's just amazing. Let's do this again. And you can drag something over, and you can also just click on that little plus sign and do something there. And actually, now that I'm typing, I'm seeing that I think we got another. No, it was a block quote. Okay, that's good. So let's see here. So it just put a solid vertical line, right? That's still very boring. So for a second, I just want to talk about the fact that each theme is going to handle blocks very differently. And so in this case, with this theme 2025, we just get like a little side pipe. Some of them are going to put big giant quotes. Some of them might do an underline, and that's all theme specific. So that's why I'm saying it's good to, even if you're going to load like bogus dummy stuff, it's good to throw in some of the elements that that you're going to have. If you know you're going to have a table, do that, plug in your correct info or bogus info, just so that you can see how things are going to be styled. Image, again, if you just click on it, it's going to load in wherever that cursor was flashing and bumping. Image would obviously be just for one big giant image. And for each of these, they have a little pop-up preview, which is pretty cool. Gallery is going to let you put in multiple. Audio. One thing that I do use a lot of is the media and text. And as you can see, it's quicker for me to just kind of like hover over and let that pop up stay there so I can explain it rather than go grab images and text and build all this out. Text and media, once I explain this, you might, as you move around the internet, you might be like, oh, that's a text and media side-by-side block. It's a really, really common element that shows up across the internet on lots of sites. It's a big photo next to a block of text with header, text, button. Whether that is, here's our product, here's the title, description, buy now. Sometimes it's here's our event photo or our poster, name of the event, details, buy tickets, or RSVP. And the reason why it's a really consistent element is because it's a 50-50 grid, which is great for mobile because you can stack those, or it stacks it automatically. Also, once you add this in here, you can clone that and flip-flop. And that might not seem like a big deal, but to do that back in the day was a huge pain, as simple as that might seem. And so we can create a text, an image and a text block, header, text, and button, and then get it dialed in with the styling that we want, clone it, and say flip-flop, clone it, flip-flop. And that gives you this really cool, nice waterfall design. A lot of times people do like service one, service two, service three, or their three main products or whatever that might be. But it's a great way to lay out your homepage with three different sections that's not massively text heavy. That's the media and text. Video is pretty self-explanatory. With something like that, you can pull in a YouTube video. You could pull in a Vimeo video. You can upload videos into the website. The warning that I'll throw out there is that few of us are video editors, myself included, and getting a video squished down and sized down to the point that it can actually load for somebody on a website, let alone on a mobile version of a website, it's really hard to do. That is one of the reasons why hosting your video at Vimeo or YouTube and then pulling the link over is a much better route to take. You're going to offload the storage of the video, the compression of the video, the load time of the video, all off to one of the companies that does that for a living. And you can do that with a free version of YouTube. You can also pay, Vimeo or YouTube to do that in addition. You also get the benefit of that video being on one of those platforms, and then that can help drive traffic and link collectively to the site. So that's a benefit as well. So I always try and encourage folks to either work with somebody that's a video person to get a really bite-sized version, 2-3 megabytes, even that's kind of big. And that's really tough to get a video crushed down to something like that, especially a video that might load up in the header for everybody. You got to think about how long it's going to take the site to load and people's patience these days as time goes on. All right, moving down here, a couple more that I want to call out that are just kind of common blocks. The column layout, this is going to let us go in and dictate, for instance, 33, 33, 33. And the reason I picked that one is because there's a trend that goes way back beyond and behind the internet days, and it's the rule of three. And it's the fact that we lay out content, humans absorb content well when topics or things are laid out in columns of three. My newspapers a lot of times are laid out that way. And that design element, again, just like the little text image side by side, rule of three, you will see all over the internet. And a lot of times people do, about who am I or who is the company, services or a service, and then whatever the call to action is. So those are kind of the typical side by side layout of elements, because that's kind of the order that people want to know about it. Who is this person or this company? What are they offering or selling? And then, okay, I'm ready. I want to fill out a quote form. I want to get in touch. I want to, whatever that call to action might be. So that's the rule of three, and you can do the column layout to do that. And as we can see right here, they've laid in there, okay, in column number one, I want to put in a photo, and then I can add that in here, and then I can add the next columns on Word. Yeah, and I can pull items down into that each column there. All right, jumping down a couple more, and then we're going to get into some stuff that's a little bit more exciting, I promise. Let me make sure I've covered a lot of these in here. Media, text, video. Accordions are a great way to lay out lots of content. If you're trying to take lots of pages or a really wordy, lengthy site, and you want to keep that content because it's either good for Google, which it is, but it's a little overwhelming visually for a user, you can lay in accordions. And we've all seen these and interacted with them a bunch. It's a little heading, maybe divided by two little horizontal lines from the next heading. And when you click it, it expands out. And so the really cool thing about those is that all that content is still on that page. And so Google still crawls it and sees it. And now these days, all the AI services as well, ChatGPT and Claude, if that content's there on the site, it's still seen by them, but it's not seen by the user, and it's not overwhelming until they want to dig deeper into it. So you can do that with tabs. You can do that with accordions. Most of us are more most of us see and interact with accordions more than like a tab layout these days. Separators are just going to be big horizontal lines if you want to divide out sections in your content. And then I'm going to just talk briefly about widgets and then the stuff down below. Once you get into the widget area, as far as pulling in blocks that are considered widgets, and if anybody's been in the WordPress realm for a while, this term widget's been around since the beginning of WordPress. And it's a lot of times it's just like little bite-sized pieces of functionality or design. And sometimes we need to add blocks that are maybe like a little bit over our head. And what I mean by that is, let's say you use MailChimp, or let's say you're trying to set up an AdWord campaign, or you're given some kind of like tracking code to like add to your website. And you're like, I don't know what this code is saying, but I know I'm supposed to put it somewhere on the site. You can custom HTML a lot of times is what you're going to want to do. So if you're given code by either like a third party newsletter service or you name it, or from somebody that's helping you with analytics or AdWords or whatever, a lot of times that's going to be the widget that you put in that you drop that complex code into. It's probably not even going to like render and show up on the front side, but it's going to fire and be compiled and show up in the code of the site. So and then the baby version of that is what's called a shortcode. And I'm going to mention this, but we're not going to dig into it right now. But shortcodes a lot of times are used within plugins, and we may, if we add a plugin that needs a shortcode, we might jump back into this. Themes, we're not going to do this because we're not going to talk about the theme blocks because they're specific to this theme. And if you haven't landed on whatever theme you're going to use yet, you don't really need to go exploring deep into it, assuming that you're probably going to pivot and go to something else. So we're going to skip over this section. And then the very last area that I want to mention is just the embed section. And this is where you're going to find a lot of services that you probably don't know and some that you instantly recognize. And that's true for myself as well. There are a few of them in here, like Issue is a way for people to do virtual flip books. And so again, if you're using, let's say you run a vacation home business and you've got these flip books for each place and you're using Issue, that's your quick little embed feed to like get that flipbook version loading onto your site. So a lot of times rather than go to the more complex, like, oh, give me the embed code for this, go take a look at the widget section, the embed section, and see if there's the service that you're actually using that can kind of make that handshake in a better way. And there's also some YouTube related things in here. And all right, we're going to wrap up with that one. So let's scroll all the way back to the top. And I went through that whole block exercise there and didn't really talk a whole lot about what happens on the right-hand side. But now that we've got some diversity of the blocks that are loaded, I want to click through these. And so this first one up here, if we go look over on the side, it's a paragraph block. And the settings down below that are going to be really unique and specific to all the paragraph blocks. You're going to have the same adjustments, color, backgrounds, whatever that particular block is all about. When I click on this next one down, we've got image, and we can change certain aspects about how that image is loaded into the site. The actual aspect ratio, whether we want to fix the width and size. And then for some of these, we're going to have an advanced tab down below. And again, just kind of walking through each one of these, we've got the 50-50 grid. We can change it to a 70-30 and we can manipulate that. I actually accidentally loaded that one in as a paragraph. Here we've got another image inside of the column block. And then down here is where we would go and add another one. So before we move on past it, I want to jump into, I try to cover this first bit in the first hour, and then we're going to shift over into some slightly more, we're going to go into the settings for a section, and I'm going to talk about that. And then we're going to jump into plugins and themes, which will lead off into a few other realms. So if anybody has questions about like building out the content of a page, throw it in there. I am going to wrap up the page layout in just a second here. The last little bit that I want to talk about is like the top level of the page settings. And so I've clicked back on page over here, and we could set a featured image for the page, which is not used all the time. Again, that's theme specific, but sometimes you might have like a big header block in your theme that loads at the top of every page. And a lot of times that's going to be powered by the featured image of that page. So this is where in the settings section, we could say, set a featured image, and I want to just upload and drop an image that's going to be that header. Keep in mind, if your theme changes, that design element might go away. Also keep in mind that if it is putting an image up in the header, it probably needs like a really wide, short header image. And then these 7 down below, we've got aspects about the page publishing that we can set. Is it completely public? Is it private? Can anybody see it or not? Is it immediately live, or are we going to save it as a draft, or are we going to schedule it in the future? Who's the author that created it? If it's you building the site, probably all the content's going to come from you, but you can create users and things like that in the system. And the template, discussion, and parent are a little bit kind of level 2 stuff, but template is there's different styles that you can set for posts and pages and events and products. And some themes have those capabilities and those differences in the template. Discussion is related to, again, kind of going back to WordPress as a blogging platform. Do you want to allow comments to be added to the post that you're creating? That's used more on posts than on pages, but it's available on both sides. We typically just turn off all discussions when it comes to blog posts because it's a great backdoor for folks to try and attempt to hack the site. And if you're not really paying attention to comments and you accidentally just click approve, that opens up the door for that user to just like bombard and load stuff. So it's a rare circumstance that we actually keep the discussion and the commenting turned on. And I'll show you in a second how to turn that off. And then the parent page, we don't really use that often either. The parent means you can kind of nest items underneath other items. But when you build out the menu, you can do the same thing there. And that's a little bit easier to manage. And we'll walk through that as well. So we threw some junk, bunch of blocks on this welcome page. I'm going to click publish. And we get this secondary set here that says, are you really, really sure you want to publish with all the settings? And you can click publish twice. You can also come down here at the bottom and say, stop showing me these pre-published checks. When I click publish, just publish the page. But it gives you one last chance to set the visibility and to schedule that in the future. So I'm going to click publish, and we now have that page live. We can go look at this beautiful homepage that just because we didn't throw a whole lot of content in there, it's just placeholder blocks down below that weren't really used. But we've got this page going. So it opened it up in a new tab. I'm going to close this one as well as the Lorem Ipsum tab, and we'll get back to just this main screen. And I'm going to jump back to the pages, and I'm going to create one more page, and I'm going to call this the blog page. Again, we get this little pop-up here. Close that out. We could also say, don't show the starter patterns. And I'm going to just call this the blog page. And actually, while we're doing this, I'm going to publish this page. And again, I'm going to uncheck to say, stop showing me the second step. I'm just going to publish a series of pages so that we can both assign those pages to different things. And we can also kind of build the menu. And that'll be good to just kind of walk through that process. So we've got a home page. We've got a blog page, services page. Jump back, add page. A lot of times we've got a gallery page or testimonials or something like that. And I'm just running through just, creating some pages, click and publish. We need a contact page. It took me a long time of building websites before I realized that really all websites kind of have just like 5 or 6 in core pages, right? And there's lots of other stuff that might need to be in the mix, but it's home, services, about, contact, and then sometimes either gallery, FAQs, testimonials, request a quote. Like you have these kind of secondary or tertiary pages, but they're really all going to have just that primary stack. You might call it about us or about me or just about. You might say contact or contact us. It could be welcome or home. But most sites are going to have that standard stack of pages. So we've got these in here now, and I told you we were going to jump over into some of the settings. We're going to do that briefly, but these are some important ones. By the way, I believe this is getting recorded. I see the little timer going, so you will all get a transcript and a video link afterwards that I'm not in control of, but I think it will be sent to you. So top level of the settings screen, as boring as it is, it's worth going through these both in this class, but also on your own. Top level settings under general is where we set the site title. You can also set a tagline, and those both are going to help a lot with SEO, search engine optimization. So another TLA. We've got a site icon. That's going to be what shows up, also called like a favicon or favicon, shows up in the little tab up top. We've got the address of where this site lives right now. This is something that you're not going to change until you're like ready to go live with your domain name. When you're ready to point the domain name to this WordPress website, a lot of times your hosting company will change that for you. If they don't, you might have to go in and do that, or open a ticket to say, okay, I'm ready for prime time. I pointed the domain name, make it load at the domain name and not this temporary thing. But there's a step involved that's not related to WordPress, where WordPress is just like, just point me to the right spot. Getting to that right spot, as far as like the work behind it, is typically handled between wherever your domain name is and wherever your hosting company is, or one and the same. The email address that you set up as the admin account. By default, it's going to say, can anybody register? And unless you're creating some kind of online community or forum, that's going to be off by default. You can also say, hey, if somebody signs up, this is the role that they go into. But again, a lot of us are probably just building a site and not trying to create a big, collaborative thing. Language, there's that time zone that I mentioned that we could go in and change. I think we're -5, -5. And then you can choose date format, time format, and week starts on. I'm just going to go ahead and save that. All we did was change the time zone. Running through these next ones a little quickly here, because I know plugins and themes are probably what most people care about. Going to the writing tab, there's almost nothing on here that you need to worry about. WordPress has the ability to where you can email your website and it will create a post. It really, it's called RPC. Nobody really uses it. We're going to move on from that. The reading section is very important. And there's a couple very specific things. The first one is your homepage displays at the moment your latest post. That's the toggle that takes WordPress from a blogging platform and turns it into a website platform. So I'm going to say homepage should show homepage should show a static page, and that static page is, and that list is why we built out those pages. Homepage is going to show the welcome page, and the post page, where are the blog posts getting pushed to, is going to be the blog page. If you're like, I'm not a blogger, I'm never going to blog, that's totally fine. I get it. And you don't need to. And I'm not here to teach you all about blogging and tell you the importance of it, despite the fact that it is important. Call it events, call it news, call it recipes, call it projects, call it education, call it classes, call it whatever you want to call it that aligns better with your business. If you're like, I can't get over that term, I'm not a blogger, I'm not going to blog, that's fine. What kind of content can you produce and put out onto this website or blog that is educational, is helpful, is informative, helps people realize that you're probably the person that they should go to and hire because you've got this knowledge of your realm of expertise, whatever it might be. And so I've had a lot of people say, like, I'm never going to blog. I don't want that page to even exist. And I just try my hardest to say, just try to come up with something that you can produce monthly, quarterly. You want to use AI, you want to hire an assistant, you have somebody, produce something that's not just static pages that live. And do it early on, because if you have a site for a long time, it's so much harder to like start that process compared to going into a rebuild and saying, you know what, I am going to try to create a section where I can put out, whatever it is that's like evolving inside of the business. We've had artists who do commission work, and they'll create a blog post about, the wood, the metal sculpture, or the glass doors, or the chandeliers, or the handrails, or the furniture, and they'll show progress, and they just find something to put out there. And it's shocking to see how much of a difference that type of content trickle can actually do to get the site seen. So that's my last little bit on that one. So create a page as that catch-all, call it whatever you want, and then set WordPress under reading to point your postings to that section. And then down here at the bottom, this is also a really important one. because the site right now is a temporary site, there is no domain name pointed to it. That checkbox isn't really that important to discourage search engines because Kinsta has all these test sites blocked. They don't set up a test site and then instantly like show it to Google or show it to the world. But if you have a website, a WordPress website, and you're cloning it, and you're like, I'm going to tackle a rebuild. I want to load a new theme and I want to load some new plugins or I want to change the content. When you make that clone, it is really important to make sure that that checkbox is checked. And that checkbox basically says, Google, do not come and crawl this website. And this is really important if you are evolving a current live website and you've got like this sandbox version, you don't want to create what's called duplicate content. You don't want to straight up clone all of a sudden to show up online and be visible because that is confusing for Google. And if it starts to show up in search, that's even more confusing for actual visitors looking for the business. So make sure that one is checked for the site that you don't want to be found. And so I'm going to check it and save it. Again, because the server set it up in a way, like I don't need to, but for the purpose of this, I'm going to say like, make sure that that checkbox is checked on that staging website. Discussion, this is the only one that I'll throw out that you might want to take a screenshot of. I'll actually take a screenshot as well, and I can try to float that out. But this is where you can control and lock down all the posting capabilities and the commenting capabilities. And so what I typically do is I come in here and again, I haven't changed any of this stuff, but I'm going to uncheck allow people to submit comments on new posts. Never allow that. I'm going to say users must be logged in to make a comment. And if I'm the only user or my team's the only users, then they can't do that. And then I'm going to say automatically close comments on posts older than 0 days. And all of those things are going to, on a few different levels, kind of lock down and just say, anytime a blog post or whatever you use postings for, anytime one of these comes out, don't let anybody make comments onto it. This isn't like a public, I want comments coming back in. And then down here at the very bottom, before a comment appears, it must be manually approved. And so that's like the last little lockdown moment. I come all the way to the bottom and click save. So again, recap. Whoop. It's weird. So uncheck allow people to submit, automatically close after 0 days, and comments must be manually approved. Not sure why that first checkbox didn't save, but there we go. Okay. Last couple things on here, media, set the default size for the images that you might upload. Quick little best practice, images should be sized to whatever size they're going to be used at. If you're putting in a big header image, it needs to be bigger than a small little image that sits off to the side. One of the most important things you can do in this whole journey is build a best practice early on that you always size and name your images. It will go so far in the grand scheme of things for your own sanity later, looking for pictures, for Google, for users, for ADA compliancy, for all of these things that you could name. Name your images. I know it seems really simple, and I've been trying to tell people for like 20 years that how important it is. And only do some folks later on come back and they're like, wow, all of my images are showing up on Google image searches. And it's like, yeah, it's because if you name them properly and you size them down appropriately, the site's going to load quick, and then Google actually knows what that image is all about. So we're a blogger. How do we get engagement? Let me jump back to the chat here. That's a really good question. So if you're a blogger and you turn off comments, how do you create engagement? For a long time now, social media has kind of taken over the back and forth and the commenting, and because there's a whole lot more people there, obviously. And so one option is you can add a plugin, which then gets loaded onto your site that connects the dots between Facebook is how we used to do that. There's, choose your poison, choose your social media platform that you want to find that engagement on. But a lot of them will, if they have the ability to kind of create that comment thread, you can connect the dots between your blog posts on your site or whatever content on your site you have and offload in a way that conversation over to social media and keep kind of a feed connecting the two. We do have some sites that allow comments to be in place. We just make sure that if we are going to do that, and if that site's on our server, that the client really understands not like the security risk, because it's not huge, but they need to make sure that they're not just automatically approving stuff. And so as long as you're going to like read all those comments and try and really spot the bogus ones, which is getting harder and harder and harder, that's like the nervous realm of making sure that it is a legit person, it's a legit comment, and that you do want to let that person collaborate or post on there. So hopefully that helps answer the question. I am really happy to know that there is somebody who's just like, I'm just building a blog with this. So that's really cool, because most times there's like one person who might be like, I'm thinking about a blog. But that's cool. That's good. Jumping back over here, last really just last one thing. I'm not going to dig too deep into the privacy section here. Permalinks is kind of a dangerous page. If you're going to ever make any change to this, you need to do it like from the get-go, like before your site's live, before you've pointed a domain name to it. And the one thing that I would point out here is that by default, this plain permalink structure is turned on, and you can see the example down here, question mark P equals 123. That took the name of your page or the name of your blog post and turned it into a number. And for some reason, that's set like that by default. That, again, is not very search engine friendly. It's not very bookmarkable. You can bookmark it, but it's, it doesn't show up the right way. So if you were going to do anything, you can come down here and say, when the post or page gets created, it should be the post name or the page name. It should say about-us, or it should be the name of the blog post that you wrote. But again, if you do this down the road, once you've got a site live, you can break all of those links that Google knows and has indexed, meaning they've scraped your site over the months or years. They know how to get to a certain spot on your website, a product or an event. If you change that, it changes the structure of it, all of those links. So it can really break your search engine optimization and a lot of other things if you're not really, really aware of what's happening by just changing that. So again, if you're going to do it like day one, get it going. Or if you've got a site that's not set up correctly and you're redoing it, now's your opportunity to kind of restructure that and go a better route with it. So I'd set it as post name. And the one other option there is month and name. So whoever asked about, so Veronica, you asked about if you're just doing a blog, you might want that date. That's the one addition here, is we get the month and the year added into it. And so that's an example where if you are just doing a blog, the date stamp in the URL might be helpful. I'm going to save that. Again, privacy, we're not really going to dig too deep into this. A number of years ago, they created a page that lets you spin up a privacy policy page. And then later they just like added it for us and saved it as a draft. You can go in and say, yeah, I want to use this, or I want to create a new one. Again, with, Claude and GPT these days, you can get a really well-crafted, unique and custom privacy policy, terms of service based on whatever the business is, whether that includes shipping or payment information or anything else that you might want to put in there. What kind of data you are or are not collecting, those types of things. Okay, that was fun. Oh my God. All right, we're going to go in and anybody have an opinion if you want to do themes or plugins next? We're going to do both. Both are fun. If anybody's got any like specific plugins they're curious about or specific themes they're interested in, throw it out there. Otherwise, I'm just going to wait about. Yep. Oh,
I have a question
yeah.
for you. So mine is more kind of unique because I have to have HIPAA situations going on. But mine is that how you have the call to action button, or you have something that say contact us, and it's
Mhm.
like a form or a plugin where you put their name, add name, phone number, email, and then hit submit, and it comes to email. What
Yep.
plugin is that?
That's a good question. That means we're going to jump into plugins first. Thank you. So there, as I mentioned before, there's like 60,000 plugins, 65,000, I think. And there's free plugins and paid plugins, just like with themes. right? So I'm going to isolate those two for a second. Plugins are functionality, make it do a thing, send a contact form, make the images slide in a certain way. The theme is more about the fonts, the colors, the layout, right? So like the skin of the site and the functionality of the site. And that is the core behind content management systems. Functionality, design, and content, all isolated from each other. So, and I'm going to talk about Divi and Elementor next. So thanks for that next one in there, Charles. Um, so back to the plugin aspect, there's two plugins loaded by default. Again, I didn't load either of these. They were both loaded kind of right out of the gate. Hello Dolly is just a starter plugin built by WordPress to just kind of, it's as one of my employees said years ago, it's really just for you to practice deleting plugins. It does nothing, literally. It's not a plugin. It is, but it doesn't do anything. And so it's a starter for people to like learn how to make plugins if they want. I'm going to delete it. And so you got to delete it. And then the other one that's in here by default is a Kismet, which is a spam plugin. Veronica, on the blogging topic, this is a plugin that you might want to turn on, look into. I think they charge like $5 a month, and they are like, it is built by WordPress, the company that is behind what we're talking about, which is actually called Automatic. Right there is the name of it, and it is one of the few like paid plugins that they have. It does a really good job with spam prevention. So the question about forms, and this is a good realm because a lot of us need to deal with forms. I'm just going to type in the word form. And sorry, before I even do that, I clicked on the word plugins, and I clicked on add plugin. And then now I just did a search for just the word form. And we have 200, oh no, there's 278 pages of plugins. There are over 10,000 plugins that have the word form in it. So for a few of these realms, I'm going to give you like my favorite that's free and then my favorite that's paid. And then based on what you're doing and how not a legit or official it needs to be, but based on how complex you need to make it, where you might want to go. So I'm going to give you kind of 3 levels for the form answer. The first one is this one called Contact Form 7. And it's, if we were to say like good, better, best, Contact Form 7 is the good. Right out of the box, you can click install now, activate it, and we'll do this with one of these, and you can build a form. It's not going to be HIPAA compliant. It's not going to be overly complex or let you collect a whole lot of info. You're going to have to like muscle with it to really kind of build it out further. So it's kind of like, I need a basic contact form and that's it. Name, phone number, email, best time to contact, something like that. So that's the good. Ninja Forms is the better. And I'm going to click install. It grabbed a fresh copy of that plugin from the company who built it. And then install turned to activate. And so I'm going to activate it. Ninja Forms, the reason why I say this is the better is because, again, I don't know about the HIPAA compliant aspect of it, but it lets you do more with it. If you need to have conditional logic or checkboxes or radio buttons or drop downs or any of these different types of things, it's a little bit easier to build those out. And you can build a full-blown big old form on your site. You can have multiple forms. They can go to different people. The other really cool thing is that I'm going to click over here on the left. I think they still do this, we'll take a look in a couple seconds here, but they create a starter form for you. And they're like, here, start with this. We've created one, we've given it this name. But I want to point out before I click on this that now that we've turned this plugin on, we've downloaded it and activated it. On the left-hand side here, we get a new menu item. The most frustrating thing about plugins in general is you find one, you turn it on, you say activate, you install it and click activate, and then it goes somewhere. Like it put a menu item somewhere. And there's a few different places that it could put it. In this case, it's right at the top level. It was visible. It's not buried under anything. But sometimes you have to go looking for it. So sometimes it might show up under tools, might show up under settings, or it might just create its own menu item like this did. So I'll click on Ninja Forms. This is the other really, really cool thing about Ninja Forms and a lot of other really quality plugins, is that they walk you through. I think this is what it's gonna do here. No, I don't want the emails, and sorry, I don't want to make it better. But create your first form. It's cool. I like working with companies and using plugins that there's there's real people behind it, and they show folks, that's their team presumably, and they do a good job of just like being real folks. So create your first form, contact me. Oh, I'm so glad we picked a plugin that needed shortcode. I mentioned shortcode like 30-ish minutes ago. I said, hey, sometimes you might need to load the custom HTML and like drop some confusing code into it. And the baby version of that is what's called a shortcode. And this is what a shortcode is. It is a square bracket, little call out. And all this is saying, it's telling WordPress, when this is in a page, load whatever's behind it. And so Ninja Forms makes this super easy. It says, here's your form, and here's the shortcode that you need to put wherever you want it to show up. And so all we got to do is take that and paste it in a block somewhere on whatever page it is, presumably the contact page. But this could also go into the footer. If I click on contact me, we've got a very straightforward, very basic name, email, message, and we can come in here and add new fields. This has gotten smooth. I haven't used this plugin in a while, but like the way that slid in with that little curve, good job, Ninja Forms. And so over here we have, kind of the collection of fields that we might need. And so some of them in here related to, starting to be a little bit more HIPAA compliant and those types of things and just prevent spam. We've got CAPTCHA down here. CAPTCHAs are the things that say the really annoying things that are like, what are the letters behind this wavy stuff? Or choose the stop signs that are in this picture. Those are CAPTCHAs. They suck, but they're helpful and they keep spam and bots from bombarding your email. So it's good. But we can collect, any other information. And there's probably add-ons. Like this is just the free version. So I'm sure that there are add-ons to this plugin that would give us the ability to, let's say, like add products or add prices into the form. We can kind of evolve this as much as we might need to. Next tab over, actions, emails and actions. When somebody fills this out, what happens? Record the submission. Save a copy of it. Email the person that filled it out. Email me. And then show the user a success message. We got your message. We'll be in touch in 48 hours, 24 hours. And you can go in for each of these and you can change what the wording is and when it triggers, whether or not it's on or off, things like that. And we're not going to dig super deep into this, but there are some additional settings where you can set styles, conditional logic, things like that. So I mentioned the good, better, best. I'm going to leave this form. The best form plugin that I would recommend if you want like either HIPAA compliant or something that's just like the best of the best. Oops, I need to add plugin. And I'm going to search for the word gravity, and it did show up over here, but I want to point something out, and that is that a lot of times there are plugins that latch onto the success of others. And this is one of those examples where Gravity Forms is that best option. And so some plugins you can't actually get from inside of WordPress, and you might need to go to their website. So this is one of those examples where I would want to go to Gravity Forms. And this is also, I mentioned, this is the only one of these three that is not free. And it's not super expensive. I want to say it's like 100, it's 59 a year, which if you are building out a lot of forms, that is worth it because it connects to HubSpot, MailChimp, Campaign, like all the newsletter signups and all these different services. They're going to have things like HIPAA related compliancy, and there's a lot of other companies that have built stuff on top of it. Yeah, and Veronica asked, is Ninja Forms free? Contact Form 7 and Ninja Forms are both free right out of the gate, but they probably both have paid versions. And that's called the freemium model. It's free to like get in and use it a little bit, but they're going to block out certain features that they know you're probably going to want. And then that's when they're going to say, okay, now you need to give us, whatever it is that they charge. But Gravity Forms is kind of the top of the batch. I'm going to run through a list of plugins fairly quickly. We're right at the 4:30 mark. I want to have time for some theme stuff and some questions at the end, if there are any. And so let me just glance over at my list here. Before we move straight into the themes, I want to, or sorry, deeper into the plugins, I do just want to mention that posts, blog posts, again, call them whatever you want to call them, they're exactly the same as pages. Like the editing capability, the layout, like this looks exactly like what we saw when we created the welcome, contact, services, about, and gallery. The one addition that we get with posts is the ability to tag and categorize. We can group postings into a particular category or a series of categories. We can also interlink different pieces of content by way of a common term. And so if you're an acupuncturist, you can connect the dots between, different ailments, for instance, like these different techniques or these different services tag tie to this one particular thing, back pain or, sciatica. And it gives us the ability to kind of cluster and interconnect pieces of content. So tags and categories are really important. It's a good idea to kind of think about as you're going in and building your site out, especially if you are going to kind of embrace the posting section and say, yeah, I'm gonna produce some content. How might you classify those? What buckets might you put them in? Categories? And then what are the other like little keywords that you might want to tag onto these different services or products? So I do want to mention, and I'm going to do this by way of just going back to the plugin page, adding a plugin, and I'm going to search for a few of these. I'm not going to load them all and run through them all, but these are in the most case, these are all free. The ones that I'm getting ready to run through. Some have paid versions. That's that freemium model. And the first one is going to be Yoast. It is Yoast. Yoast right there up at the top. It's got 10 million active installs. So that's another way to kind of gauge how prolific a particular plugin is in its realm of SEO or forms or sliders or whatever it might be. So Yoast is used by 10 million plus. I've been using it for 20 years. It's great. And there's a free version, and it does most of what you need to just kind of like SEO your site without having to do a whole lot. You should still write quality content, name your photos. It's not going to do that for you. But it's going to help you kind of create better title tags and things like that. So that is Yoast. We could say install, we could run the setup. And again, it's going to walk us through kind of the initial configuration onboarding stuff. WordFence is the next one. So from a security standpoint, security is a thing on the internet and more every day. WordPress, if there's negative feedback out there about the platform, it's that, oh, WordPress sites always get hacked or, something like that. WordPress is the biggest target. And so it's like saying, at one point, this probably isn't true anymore, but Volkswagen bugs, there's more broken down Volkswagen bugs than any other car. Well, there was more of them made. So there's more to break down. If you're a hacker and you're going to build something to hack sites, you pick the biggest bullseye. And so that's WordPress. Also, because a lot of times the folks that get into it, they aren't developers, by trade. They just need a site. And so it's easy to overlook a lot of the best practices and things like that. So having a quality security plugin is a really good thing. And it's going to look for, and so WordFence is that plugin. Again, freemium version, free version, and then paid if you want to do that. And it's going to look for things like files that don't match what should be known as like, this is what these WordPress files are. So if anything gets changed on your site, it's going to flag it. It'll look for firewall issues and configuration problems and all different types of things. Plugins that may be on your website that are no longer supported by whoever built them at whatever time they were built. And so it'll help you kind of stay ahead of the security related to your site. And then definitely it'll spot stuff. If your site does get hacked and there's a problem, it'll help you unhack. The events calendar, as much as it pains me to mention this plugin, I will, because we use it a lot, and it's built by a company called Modern Tribe. I guess maybe now they've sold to Stellar WP, but the events calendar. If anybody needs an event system, it is the best. The reason why I'm hesitant is because they've kind of maybe outgrown their britches a bit, and the support's not always as good as I wish it was, having this plugin on like 50 plus websites. And so if there's issues with it, it affects a lot of sites for us, and it's not just like one. And a lot of our sites are really, really, really lean on their calendar of events. We manage a lot of towns and nonprofits and organizations. And so a calendar of events is like really, really, really important for them. If it goes down, it's a big deal. So for the most part, it's fairly stable. But one thing that happens with events is as you start to say, well, can we sell tickets with it? Can we do event check-in? Can we, all these different things? It starts to get pretty complex, and the more complex the site and the list of plugins is, the more easily things can break. This is a good one. This one is called SiteKit, and SiteKit is built by Google and maintained by Google, which is great. And what it does is it lets you very quickly and easily connect your site to Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google AdWords, and Google Page Speed Insights. Those four. The first two are really important. If you're not doing Google AdWords, that third is less important. And then the fourth is kind of off people's radars, but Google has a tool that helps check the speed of your site page by page by page. So that one plugin connects to all four of those services, all run by Google, plugins built by Google. It's the quickest and easy way to connect your site to all of those, and it will help you both create the Google Analytic account, the Google Search Console account, and it'll help with that onboarding. And even if you're building a small site and you're like, you know what, I don't really even care about the traffic at the moment, like I need to get up and running and just like one day I'll care, set it up early on. Just set it up, because if you one day down the road, you're like, oh, I never did that tracking thing. You're not going to get any of the data back behind the moment that you install that. So work through the YouTube video or the blog post that you have to find that really shows you how to do it. But Sidekick does a really good job right off the bat of like, you ready to get going? Click this, we'll authenticate, and it'll help you through that process. All right, picking up the pace a little bit so we can do themes. There's a really good plugin called Redirection, also free. I think it's completely free. I don't even know if they have a paid version. And 2 million active installs. This helps with two important things: redirecting. So if you are rebuilding a website and those addresses, the page names do change, you can say, hey, Google, sorry about that link change. The old page was here. Here it is now. And any of those that you can kind of help identify and make a redirect, that's going to help with the rebuild and the traffic flow and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that it does a really good job at is error 404s, which is a oops page not found. Again, that just happens if you have events that get archived after the event's gone. It creates a 404. If you have products that you're out of stock on and they get pulled, that's a 404. If you have a blog post that you unpublish, it's a 404. So, identifying, tracking those 404s, and then making a redirect once you find it is a really important process. And then last two that I'm going to mention. This one is called Updraft Plus. And we talked a little bit about kind of the need for backups, but this is a great plugin. There's a free version and a paid version where it will both help you run daily, weekly, monthly backups of your website. You can offload those to Google Drive, to Dropbox. You can get an email with those files. It's not super important what you plan to do with the backups. It's more important that you just have them in case something does happen. If your site gets hacked, if somebody, an employee or yourself, deletes all the pages accidentally, it's a really good thing to have a backup just kind of sitting somewhere that you can go back to. Even if it's a month old, it's better than nothing. So Updraft is great. We've used it for years and years and years. Can't recommend them enough. We do have the paid version, but we use it a lot to migrate sites from wherever they are before we work with the client. And we use that plugin to move them to one of our servers where we test and update and then launch. Finally, last one on here is WooCommerce. And is anybody, if they want to chime in, Is anybody trying to do e-commerce related to their site? I'm just kind of curious. I know Shopify over the past 10 plus years has really just said like we're the best and the only out there that we do e-commerce, and they do, and it is a good platform. It can get really expensive. They do make the onboarding really easy, but there are a lot of limitations. And almost all Shopify plugins, like I think they call them add-ons, almost all of them are going to cost something, and it's going to cost something per month typically. Whereas if you build your e-commerce website on WordPress, you then add WooCommerce, and WooCommerce is the e-commerce gateway that lets you take payments, handle shipping, build out product pages, all that stuff. And so I'm definitely not going to walk through the entire WooCommerce journey, but they do a fantastic job of saying, here are the steps that you need to do for us to set this store up correctly, and walk through this process. So, and they're going to ask things like, are they physical products or digital products or both? Are they variable products? Do you have like small, medium, large where the prices need to change? Do you have different colors? Do you use FedEx, UPS, DHL, USPS? So they try to really kind of curate that create that setup of the e-commerce store. But it's too lengthy, and we're not going to run through that right now. So, there was a question that I want to get back to, and this transitions us over into themes. So if there's any questions before we do that in related to the plugin landscape, now would be a good time. Again, for any of these questions that pop up afterwards, or if you start working through all these motions, you can send me an email, and I'll do my best to try to help guide you through it. WooCommerce is a beast of a plugin, and I think I already answered this, but Ninja Forms is free. Yes. I want to transition over to a company called Elegant Themes, and this is going to answer the question about opinions on Divi versus Elementor. So let me log out of this. So we're moving away from the plugin. So we're moving away from functionality, and this is more about what the website looks like. And Divi's just changed a lot about their front end of their site very recently. They went with this dark black and blue, but same platform. We've been using Divi we've been all in on Divi for probably 12 to 13 to 14 years. And the question that came from Charles is Divi or Elementor. And those are the two popular and primary themes that most sites these days are built on. There's the third one that's called Beaver Builder, and those are really the top three. And those are all in a bucket, the same bucket called a page builder theme. And so a lot like how we had the blocks that we looked at when we built out that page, Divi, Elementor, and Beaver Builder have the same type of block capability, but they pack in some design. They pack in design. It's not just like raw text and a raw quote box and whatever. They give you a lot more capability to not just quickly build out a page, but to really manipulate the exact style of all those different elements. So it's not just a video block. You can say full width header video block, loop the video, start it at 6 seconds. Like you can really fine tune exactly how it looks. So I went ahead and right before we jumped on, I went ahead and downloaded a copy. I'm going to jump back to themes, add a theme, upload a theme. And this is just like the plugin search for and upload. And as we can see, this is where all these free themes are. And we could go through and we could add one of these. And actually, we might as well, let's just change this to like, I don't know, let's do, let's go back to, I'm hesitant because sometimes you load these things and it tries to take over the whole experience and loads other things that we don't want in place, but we'll just see what happens here. So I loaded that plugin, I loaded that theme and I activated that theme. And now if I go back to the front of the website, it changed it a little bit, right? Like it changed the font, it changed the layout. We ditched the sidebar. We now have this massive menu that showed up, some of which because we loaded WooCommerce, for instance, shop and my account and checkout and cart those got loaded in by way of WooCommerce, the plugin. But if we go back to, we'll do one more theme real quickly, and then I want to load, we're going to load Divi. And so I'm going to say add a theme. And we'll come over here, we'll pick Astra. There is a Hello Elementor, that's a free version, and then there's the paid version that you would upgrade to. We'll activate this one. To answer Charles' question, I'm a way bigger Divi fan if I didn't answer it clearly enough. I mean, we've got 250 plus sites that we've built on Divi. And I've been using Elegant Theme Designs since longer than they've had Divi out as a theme. Again, it changed a little bit, not a whole lot. It would have helped if we'd added an image and a media text and a column layout and a rule of three, and we might see it manipulate a little bit more. But I wanted to make sure that we saved enough time to do what we're getting ready to do here. And that is to load. So I get to appearance. I'm going to add a theme, upload a theme, and I'm going to add the Divi theme. And we will install that. And while that's happening, I grab my little key. Because Divi is a paid theme, even though I have a copy of it, you have to, once you load it, you have to put in your API information essentially. And we'll get that pulled up here. All right, so we're gonna we've activated, we loaded it, we're gonna activate it, log in to activate your license. Should auto populate. Let's see if that works. Cool. All right. Again, they do a really good job of kind of walking you through this process of here's how you work through this. I'm going to just jump immediately over to kind of walking everybody through it myself. And I want to jump first. I'm going to go back to that page that we built out. And I'm going to go into the welcome page. And I'm going to load what's called a Divi layout. And up here, so we see the blocks that we added through WordPress down here below. And we see the big giant purple button up top. It says use the Divi builder. Click it once. Click it again. You got to be patient with it and let it do its thing. And it's going to spin around for a second. Again, a little walkthrough. If you've first time using Divi, not a bad little video. That's Nick, the founder of Divi, Elegant Themes. But I'm going to say, you know what? Let me just start building. And I used to not even talk about Divi in this whole process, but I do teach a whole separate class just on Divi that's 2 hours, but I tried my hardest to kind of squeeze this into the very end of this because you saw the difficulty of like, oh, we got to load all these images and we got to make this, we got to pick a background and like as you build the page out, it's really tedious and you got to find all this stuff. And this really does help quickly let you see what starter copy, lorem ipsum, dummy images, dummy layouts, what it can quickly look like. So we can say use the existing content, which it was just that lorem ipsum text, but we can say choose a pre-made layout. And what this lets us do is it's going to stack up all these different layout packs in here, and we'll see what it gets to. So 370 layout packs. A layout pack is a package of page designs. And so if we pick one of these, we'll kind of pick one at random. We'll do a scroll through. This one's not bad. Day spa. And on that last page that we were just on, there is the ability to filter down by e-commerce or arts or technology or business or professional or, you know, food and restaurant, bar. You can filter down based on whatever like the type of site is. But ultimately, it's really just a collection of colors, fonts, stock photos that you're going to want to change out anyway. But sometimes there's some elements kind of throughout the layout pack that you might end up using, and you can if you want to. So again, we've got about, blog, contact, home, landing, which is different than home, service, and services. And so each layout pack is going to have a different number, but most of them are going to have all of those, or at least most of those. They might not have service and services. But so we're on the home page, and so I'm going to go ahead and load the home page right here. And I'm going to say replace the existing content and use this layout. And yep, import the presets. Presets are the fonts, the colors, the styles that we just talked about. It hangs at 1 second for a little bit. Typically it jumps to 50, 60, 70, and then we'll wrap up here. And Divi changed the game. Elementor did too, but there was this wave of page builders that came about a number 15 years ago that were like, you know what, WYSIWYG, Gutenberg block editor, whatever. This is still really clunky and takes a long time. And in the end, you got to really get intimate with the site to make it look like you want it to look and to be proud of it. So hopefully this won't bomb out. Hopefully this loads the layout here. And normally this bogs down like this when I try to load like 8 pages at a time, and the server's like, hey, stop doing that, like one at a time. While this is running though, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do what I just said there is I'm going to, now let's give it another couple seconds to see if it loads. So I'm just going to save it and see what happens. We'll save it, exit the builder. It did load, but yeah, it did actually load the whole thing. Okay, cool. I'm not sure why it stalled there and then never showed the preview, but it loaded this in. I can now, that's a little intimidating. I don't think I can, I can't do that. I'm going to say enable the builder again. And I'm going to come down here. I'm going to load a different page. So I turn the builder on and off, and that basically says I want to go into edit mode, or I want to be in what people see mode. So I turn it on, and I'm going to click, I want to load a new one. This is a little too weird. Pre-made layout. I'll scroll down. I'll find that same layout pack. And I'm actually going to load the landing page, and I'll use this layout instead. And hopefully it loads fully and quickly, and we can save it and then see the difference. While it's doing that, landing page and home page are kind of the same thing. Landing pages just have a little bit more to them. And so when I'm trying to figure out like which layout pack I want to go with based on a client site, I'll go in and I'll find 3 or 4 different layout packs, and I'll load the landing page for each one. And you can do the same thing. You can go pick 4, 5, 6, 10, however many you want, and say, you know, spa homepage example, or, you know, butcher shop homepage example, and you can name them whatever it is that helps connect it to that layout pack that you want. And I'm zoomed in a lot to be able to teach this. I'm going to zoom out just a bit so we can see what this is supposed to look like at 100%, which is right there. So we've got a 50-50 layout up top. We've got a nice little parallax section. That fact that green bar kind of floats on top of her face there. We've got a rule of 4 in here. Text, video section down below. Nice parallax there. We've got some floating elements. It's kind of cool. I do like this little kind of cut line on the top and the side. Rule of 3. Testimonial call out with a little slider. Parallax section in the bottom, call to action, and then a nice clean footer to wrap all this stuff up. So kind of gives you an idea of just the diversity that can get pulled in. I'm going to save this, and once that finishes loading or doing this little spinning thing, I'm going to exit the builder. Now, when I hover, I don't have the capabilities of clicking into stuff, and I'm not going to mess anything up. And this is what people would actually see. Let me go to the contact page, and we'll do one more. I'm going to enable the visual builder, and I can go in and I could load the same page from this same layout pack. Choose a pre-made layout. We'll go back in, and I'll do this just to kind of show you the cohesiveness of these different page designs. Contact page, use this layout, import the presets. And there's less elements on this page, so it loaded a little bit quicker. And there's our kind of basic contact page built out. So you can see how quickly, once you lock in with a layout pack, you can just say, all right, there's these 7 layouts, new page, new page, new page, new page. Load all those things on there. And then you can go through, and I'll go ahead and save this. I'm going to go back to that home page. And I want to show you how we can turn that editor back on and just start swapping stuff out. So again, we're not going to go live with those stock photos or this dummy text. And so now, much like we had with the blocks inside of the regular block editor, I can come over here and I can click the little gear. I now have this little window that I can drag around. Helps to have a bigger screen or 2 screens. And I can update that text. There's our little WYSIWYG built into it. And again, just like with the blocks, we've got settings and sections that are very specific to whatever this is. Text settings, it says up at the top, these are all the settings related to this particular text box. And I can come in here and change the text. I could make it link somewhere. I could set a background color for that section. And I'm going to have those same abilities throughout. If I come down here to this button, it's a button setting box. We've got what's the text and where does it link to. If I drop down to that video, and again, I'm clicking on the gray little gear, this is the video module. And so inside of Divi, these are called modules. And I think Elementor has their own term for those. Beaver Builder has their own term for those. They're all kind of the same thing. It's a block, it's a widget, it's a module, it's a section, it's like whatever that happens to be based on what you're using. But they're very similar in that terminology. Much like how Shopify has add-ons, WordPress has plugins, and Divi has, or Joomla has extensions. Same thing. So we got 4 minutes left. The last thing I do want to mention, I'm going to open this up for any questions, is I mentioned at the very, very beginning that it was kind of cool that the site loaded with one plugin that needed to be updated. And so the way that I just did that is the way I jumped away from the front side is I clicked on this little circle with the one next to it. That took me to the update screen. There are 3 things in WordPress that need to be updated. WordPress itself, whenever that happens, the plugins, and the themes. And just like changing the oil on your car, just like the little updates that happen on your computer and on your phone, it's the same kind of thing. Those updates help with vulnerabilities. It helps speed things up. It helps with code conflicts. And if you choose quality plugins, quality themes, those updates won't steer you wrong. However, the reason why I stress the backups is because updates can break things. And there's nothing worse than thinking that you're doing preventative maintenance by running updates and you crash your website. So I throw that out there because it can happen. And so you should always run a backup before you run your updates, especially if your site is like a very key component of your business. So Updraft Plus, run the backup on a schedule basis or manually, and then you can go in and run your update. So I'm going to this update screen. There's only one. I'm gonna click the checkbox, say update the plugin. It should run through, come back, say good to go, green bar, plugin's now been updated. And so with that, we got a couple minutes left. I will pause and ask for questions or feedback. Anybody have anything that they want to ask that I can try to tackle in the next few?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So on the theme, the pack that you use, is it possible, let's say we have one, but we don't like that for maybe the blog post, is it possible to use a different theme for that?
100%. Yep. You can completely mix and match. Like if I go into this gallery page right here and I say, I want to use Divi because that's my theme, but I'm just not really liking the gallery page, or maybe that layout pack that I picked doesn't have a gallery template, right? I can just start going through and maybe I'll come over here and use, one of these filtering things and say fashion, beauty, and, business. Oh, let's do art. That's going to have some nice, cool gallery items. And now I can come in here and say, this photography studio probably has something. And then we can go through and say, all right, portfolio, use this layout. Now you can do this, but it's going to look different. And so then you've got this challenge of how different is okay. You can change the background colors. You can get the font set to match. That's not a problem. But yeah, you can totally just mix and match these different things. Yeah. And you can also save elements, right? So we've got all these, I've got this blue top section. I've got this next blue section down below. I've got this next section down here. We can actually save that element and then go to another page and use it. So even if you wanted to keep the whole site cohesive and use one layout pack, but you just like one piece of another one, you can totally do that as well. With Divi, with access to Divi, you get access to like 370 layout packs. There's like 2,000, 3,000 individual page layouts across all those.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Any other from anybody, either even in the chat or from just verbal? I may have not unmuted everybody. By default, it mutes everyone. But oh, Charles, got you started 12 or 13 years ago at WordCamp. That's awesome. Uh, 3 sites standardized in Elementor. Agree 100%. The Divi is much better. Cool. Thanks for hanging. 13 years ago. That's crazy. It's I started teaching WordPress in town like that was early on. So hopefully this was better. I think back about those early days and how scattered it may have been. So hopefully it's gotten a little bit better in over a decade. But I love it. I mean, it's WordPress is not to geek out here at the end, but it's changed my life and so many other people. And you can just build anything that you want to. Nobody's going to stop you. And if you hit a wall, go to YouTube, go to ChatGPT, go to Claude, ask a friend, phone a neighbor, like whatever it is. It's the biggest community out there. It's such an open, community. Even if you glance over and see somebody at a coffee shop, like working on a WordPress site, they will probably talk to you and tell you more than you might want to know. Because I know I do that all the time. If somebody does like say, hey, what you working on? And yeah, contact info. Yeah, totally. I'll put it in here. Email's the best way. I have a ton of meetings throughout the week and then teach on occasion, and then try to get outside whenever I can. But boomer@bigboomdesign.com, putting it in there. Yeah, and shoot me an email if you got like specific questions about where you're at, where you're going, the type of business, something you didn't want to ask publicly in this whole forum. Hit me with it. And I'm not teaching as much these days as I used to. Everything kind of shifted when it went all to Zoom post COVID. It was a whole lot more fun to like teach a room full of people. The attendance was higher. I could like figure out that I was losing people or not. It's a whole lot harder to have like letters on the screen. But it's 5:01. Thanks for hanging, everybody. Go play outside and then circle back in when it's dark and start working on your WordPress site. So I
Thank
missed those meetups
you.
too, Charlie. Thanks, everybody.